All right, hello everybody, and hope you're still hanging in there with this semester being as crazy as it is. So, this video is kind of an introduction to the three pieces that we're reading for this week. So, Knit 1, Inadvertent Utterances of Sound, and Autopsy Report. And these pieces are kind of a little different than the stuff that we've read so far. So most of the essays we've read so far have been fairly straightforward. They have something of like a linear narrative arc that we see very clearly. They're in first person because they're all personal. These all kind of take a different approach. So Knit 1 is in the third person, Inadvertent Utterances is in a list form, and Autopsy Report begins in really short lyric pieces, remains lyric throughout. We're going to come back to that word lyric, but you'll see it when you're reading it. So why do people do this? So there are probably a bunch of reasons, but one of the ones you're going to hear most often is that whatever form it's in, whatever strange form, is somehow intended to support the content. So this might be called mimesis. So form imitating content. Aristotle talks about that. There's no form without content, no content without form. They're working together to support each other to make an essay that those pieces work together. So, kind of as Impressionism with the light brushstrokes is imitating the first moment of seeing, and they're trying to capture that through art, this kind of essay is kind of doing the same thing. It has the form, that kind of content working together. So, how exactly does that work? So, this is an article I would have assigned you, 7 Things I Learned from Reading 15 List Essays. You can find it online, but it is not perhaps the most useful thing in the world, because a lot of the essays that are listed there and that are talked about are no longer available online, so you're kind of just taking his word for it. So I've pulled some highlights from that, some examples of how form and content might work together. So he describes an essay that is written by a community college professor that has 16 sections, one for each week of the semester, and we see through that time period, through those weeks, how the relationship between professor and students develop, and it's characterized that way. There is one essay that he describes that gives 4 separate incidents of a woman going to the movies, so 3 with different men, 1 where she watches the movie alone. And it's done that way kind of to show the contrasts. So there's one that's in the form of an outline biography of the Brothers Grimm, and that fills in details of the fairy tales around their lives to inject a kind of social, cultural, historical critique of their work. So if you go to the website for the Pinch Journal, which is the University of Memphis literary magazine, we publish some stuff that's like this too. There's like an annotated lease that's up on there, which is kind of a weird, cool way of doing it. So this is very much about just the content is there, and the form, if it's going to be in some form like this, really needs to be doing something to support that content or make some kind of point. And because most of these are in these smaller pieces, these lists or annotated something or other, it can kind of help you see, as the writer, how the pieces fit together. So, Autopsy Report and Knit 1 are a bit more of what would be considered lyric essays. So that brings the language of poetry together with nonfiction. It might feel kind of dreamlike, fantasy-like, removed from the situation. And often the form and content are working together here too, so moments when the narrator feels some sort of distance from themselves, feels some kind of out-of-body experience, it might be served by using that kind of language to bring that experience to the reader. So consider that in Purpura and Cody. So how do form and content work together to serve those pieces? So that's kind of an introduction to what we're talking about here. We have a full class meeting on Wednesday the 10th. I will email you to remind you. So I will see you Wednesday.